Okay, well, welcome everybody. I think that I know most of you or everybody that's here in one way or another throughout the years. So I'm Annie Spear. I'm really excited to be able to talk to you about what's going on at the Michigan Learning Channel with the grade 4-5 series of Read, Write, Roar that will support and complement the work that Laura was just sharing with you. I put a couple of pics up just to say, I was starting to think about the silver lining of things. I try and lean into what's positive when there's a crazy thing that happened. And when I think about the pandemic, to me, the silver lining of that is that my little niece, Ida, who you see me reading with, that I didn't get to meet till she was 18 months old, was born during that time, April 8th of 2020, when the world was really crazy. And in literacy, that we had an opportunity to create a literacy show called Read, Write, Roar, because parents and family members needed to have access to some education at home. And so I think about that. And at the Literacy Center, I was working there before becoming a coach. And we worked with fourth grade students who were not reading proficiently and who needed support. And so we provided teacher candidates with support. Dr. Megan Block and I were doing the teaching teacher candidates, who then we brought kids to campus and worked with them, trying to build some excitement and efficacy in reading. And so a lot of this work that I end up talking about is stuff I've done since 2015 when I was at CMU. But I was a classroom teacher for 8.5 years in first grade. And the silver lining of the pandemic for me was that I got to teach first grade again online through Read, Write, Roar, which is why there's a silly picture of me there for that. And my kids are in the lessons. So my kids have grown up in this network. Logan's now 15, Amelia's 13. And my husband, Matt, they've all been supportive of this. And they laugh at me when I go out and share things at the grocery store about Read, Write, Roar or literacy essentials. So we're going to do a couple of things. Now, I have more slides in here that I'm going to talk about, but in the agenda, I just want you to know that there's a slide deck for you to use about ways to watch the Michigan Learning Channel, just so that you have that as your disposal. I also want to just give you the slides so you can see different snapshots of the different Read, Write, Roar shows that are available now, and then talk about some of the tools that will connect to Laura's work, because our main focus is really on multisyllabic decoding, and I want you to just know that there are some tools out there. We still are recording the show, and 6 more episodes will be coming out that really focus on multisyllabic decoding. So there's more coming. And then as part of this, I was trying to think about, our routines, events, roles. So I put together, if you'd like to use it, a little think sheet for you so that you can think about where you are in your knowledge about some of the things we're talking about and where you want to be as far as your use of some of the things we're talking about. And there's more on this sheet than we're going to talk about. But that way you have it all in one place, so someday when you have all this time on your hands and you want to just explore, you can click on the link and check out some other things that'll be there for you. So you will see if there's an asterisk, I'm not really talking about it, but I want you to know about it. So hopefully that could be helpful. And at the close, I'm going to be asking you to look at your notes or just think about what you thought about what we learned today, so that you could take a call to action on a logistic that you want to do, and then an instructional thing you would like to do as a coach to support people. Hopefully, you will find something compelling that you think could support you in your coaching through what we have to share. So again, this is in your in the agenda, so I'm not going to go over it, but it's just a slide deck that shows you how to access the Michigan Learning Channel, and also it just outlines, this is only 2 of a 10-slide presentation that is in your agenda for you. But I just pulled out some things, so it will show you how to access it on Roku or through a Detroit PBS app. I will admit that the website is under construction right now, and it will be better hopefully within the next few months. We're gonna have a whole revamped Michigan Learning Channel website, and we are working through MASA to get it on our website too, to have some reciprocity across places. So that'll be coming, but the app is very easy to use through Detroit PBS right now, and they were gonna drop it, and I was saying how much I literally share it with parents in a grocery store. The last time I was taking a cab ride to the airport, visiting my family in Boston, I was talking to the cab driver, and he was telling me his daughter was struggling with literacy. So I was like, guess what? There's this app that you could get where there's free, certified teachers that are teaching lessons. And he was using it because he texted me later and said, hey, can you show me how to find it? So that was kind of fun. So they are going to do maybe a whole Michigan Learning Channel app instead of just a Detroit PBS so that everybody's represented. And again, these are just in here for you to know. I tried to break down what each episode series is like, so you just know that. Because like I realized I know that, but not necessarily everybody else might know that. So I just broke down for pre-K how many episodes there are, what time is involved in that, and what kind of access there is for you. So again, I'm not going through all of this with you, but I do just want you to know it's there. And one of the big parts is that there are lots of different resources for pre-K that are in Spanish and in Arabic and in English. So if you have families that are multi-language learners that happen to be in those languages, there are a few resources, which I know it's oftentimes hard to find things like that. So those are in there for you to look at when you have time. And you'll just notice as you look through the different episode types that, there's 12 episodes for pre-K, but K-3 has 224 episodes because we were filming that during the pandemic. But it's also the least, you might say, polished looking because we were filming it in our guest rooms and basements and things like that. Whereas pre-K, Janice Miller, who's in here, who's on the task force, one of our coaches, longstanding coaches, they worked with Erica Colon. And so it's one teacher for that filmed in a studio. So that's a little bit different in terms of that too, whereas there's others of you in this room, like Heather Phelps, who was a coach for the show, or I don't think Shannon's in here today. Are there any other coaches that are in here that coach teachers that I'm missing that are still here? Well, okay. Thank you, coaches that did work with the K-3. And just if you do get a chance to read the SMORE that I put in there, High Scope found effective impact on families using Read, Write, Roar, not only for family self-efficacy, but children's self-efficacy and reading using the K-3 series. So that's linked in the agenda too when you have a chance to look at that. So those are our K-3 teachers. Thank you, everybody who's on the show. And now let's think about 4-5. So I ran through that purposely fast because I don't always have a chance to chat with you all, so I put it all in there just so you can look at it later. And right now we're going to really focus on 4-5 because we've never had enough support for grades 4-5. And that was one of the reasons that was great when Michigan Learning Channel approached us and said we want to make an upper L or a middle school set of resources. And I was like, please, 4-5, if I can vote for 4-5, because we don't have anything. So it's really kind of coming together nicely. We're going to have 24 episodes for you by the end, full episodes that are 26 minutes long. But we've learned a lot throughout the other two series of what's working well access-wise. And so the producers, we're really, the main producer, Kyle Vernier, who is also on the K-3 and the pre-K, said, let's just make really a bunch of short episodes because I was finding for me to share out the YouTube playlist, which we'll talk about, were the most easy to access. And so these are full episodes, 26 minutes, but then there's lots of different small episodes, as you can see as I laid out, that you're getting 6-minute episodes or 4-minute episodes. And we're going to look at the decoding episodes that are about 4 to 4.5 minutes long each. So they're really easy to be able to use in a small group or to send home with a family, or even for you to model with a teacher how to do some of the things that Laura just outlined, Dr. Torvelli just outlined for us in the prior presentation. So we also have, Janice is supporting that. On the Detroit PBS side, I'm supporting that for MEISA. And these are in studio and out and about. So you have different people, this is Miss Audra, she's a music teacher, but there's 2-minute segments that are music episodes. And then there's Impact for Learning, which is done by a PE teacher. And I've done them when I need a break during work. And I'm I'm going to check out what the Read, Write, Roar, Restore is. And they're 2-minute episodes where you're doing planks or you're doing burpees, which I'm not really good at, but she teaches the kids how to do them, and you have a PE teacher doing that. So if you need to build in a brain break, they're actually linked to brain research, and it's not just a busy thing. So just for you to know that, those are in there, and I want you to have those. And this is our cast for the 4-5 show that's from all around, and they're amazing and so engaging and lots of fun to watch. So that is the 4-5. And one of the things we want you to know, so in first grade, when I was doing word sorting, it was important for kids to know the strategy. So I had an anchor chart for that, right? And in 4-5, when you're doing those episodes, we had Brittany, who did a really great job of creating anchor charts. So the things that Dr. Troya was talking about, specifically the overt strategy and the echelon or echelon strategy, there are organizers within the show. So a teacher can see those organizers like, oh, this is how you carry out that strategy. And it's walked through visually for you and step by step. And so we really worked hard to make sure it would be accessible for you, either as an educator who wants to learn, right? Like, I was a first grade teacher, like I said, 8.5 years. There were a lot of things I didn't know, but I'm also a question asker. If you know me, you'll know that. Like, I'm not afraid to ask questions and say, like, I'm not really sure how to do that, but that's also intimidating, and you need to be in a culture and a climate where questions are welcomed. So if you're an educator who's not in a climate where you feel comfortable asking a question, these would be a great thing that you could use and say, I don't really know what the heck you're talking about when you say word ladders, but you could go to Michigan Learning Channel and look up a word ladder episode and see what that looks like so that you could implement it. So one of the things we're gonna focus on is thinking about how the YouTube episodes for grades 4 or 5 could be utilized, but also thinking about, we have kids on a spectrum. We always want to be offering kids as much as we can at their level. We also know that if a child doesn't know their letter names and sounds, it's going to be really hard to teach them how to read a multisyllabic word, or it's going to be really hard to teach them how to read a CBC word. So I just kind of have you think about the fact that you could use one lesson type for lots of different ways. So if we think about the student who needs to have letter names and sounds taught to them, there's lots of ways that can happen. And the series has a set called Letter Heroes. So I'm using Letter Heroes as an example for all my pre-K, lower L friends out there who are going to say, why are you doing multisyllabic words? Because that's not for me. Well, there's something for everyone. And so for Letter Heroes, I think about, as a first grade teacher, how I would have used that for family engagement, to send it home with families so they could have something to do for a child that needed reinforcement in a few letters. I could use it in tier 1. When Nell was talking about what are kids doing, right, when you're taking a small group, what else is happening in that tier 1 time where kids are working independently? You could have kids on an iPad. A lot of schools have one-to-one doing a Letter Heroes episode where they're using the enhanced alphabet knowledge protocol and learning the letter name, the letter sound, finding that letter in context, learning how to form that letter. So I just try and think about, if I were still teaching in a classroom, how would I leverage this? I would also leverage it thinking about tier 2 for kids who need that double dip, right? So we've already taught this. I know that these 4 kids really need to learn letter B, and it's been really difficult. Well, they can get some of that extra instruction even with a parent volunteer that comes in your room. Like, was anyone a classroom teacher that you would have amazing parents who'd show up and be like, how can I help you today? Probably doesn't happen as much now because we have, I don't know, locks on buildings, and you have to, like, I don't know, the other day I went to a building, I had to like do a picture of myself like on a screen and put in my birth date, and I was like, oh my God. But when I was teaching, we would have people just volunteer, and sometimes you didn't have time to set something up meaningful. So these are a go-to for that too. We've also had some other people using those for special ed and using those lessons. So big idea is that there are all kinds of playlists that you can get to for Michigan Learning Channel. This shows kind of everything that you can get to. There's a whole bunch, but there's specific ones just to read, write, roar. And what I thought would be helpful for literacy coaches and teachers is to break down what's happening in those lesson types, specifically at K3 and now at 4 or 5. But there's a word builders playlist, and if you go through that, there's 3 different kinds of lessons in that, okay? So when you're thinking about kids, like when Dr. Torrella was talking about the kids that we're kind of leveraging what they do well, right? So if you have kids doing a really great job with, some vowel teamwork, or they're doing really good with blends and digraphs, but you need to like scaffold them into those multisyllabic words, you could do a little review to build a little bit more confidence using some of these other word builders episodes that are there, the let's sort, the mystery words, or the word ladders, and they have these different types of skills that are within those. When we break it down a little further, mystery word, for example, is vocabulary is leveraged, where you have to unscramble the words, like Pat Cunningham making word type of things. It was always listed and connected to whatever the content topic was for science or social studies. And so all the time with the mystery word, there was going to be syllabication, segmenting, blending, substituting sounds, adding sounds, and deleting sounds. Sometimes, depending on what the lesson was, You would do compare contrast if you had time at the end, do some more analysis, or really dig into more morphology. But for you to know that these are there, the other thing that's linked there, okay, I should have pulled up a picture of it. I forgot to do that. But there's a teaching template that was made for that. So you can pull up a teaching template, like it's ready to go for you. So once you watch one as a coach, you can share that. And those could be done with, these are multisyllabic words that the mystery words are for. They're not little words, but most of the time. And also with word letters, like I said, Dr. Dude talked about that at one of our former ones. So when you think about scaffolding up to 4 or 5, word letters might be a good place for you to start. And these are the types of skills that you would see in that. And there's also a teaching template for word letters lessons. So that brings us into multisyllabic words, right? Because when we were building the show, we made sure that we leveraged the research, just like Dr. Tortorelli was sharing with us. The same articles that she utilized, we utilized. I had met with her, and Janice and I had met. We thought, like, what do we really need to pull out for 4 or 5? And I said, I'm going to just check with Dr. Tortorelli. And so we, one of my jobs was to make onboarding for all the coaches and teachers. I can link it in for you. There's a lot more slides in here because I cut it out, but put together a lot more slides from the IES practice guide that break down what the overt strategy is and break down the best strategy a little bit more. But we leverage the same thing. So when we knew that Dr. Tortorelli was going to speak, I wanted you to know that the things that she was speaking of are what we utilized in the show. And so there's all of these resources that we gave to the teachers of the show were so that it would be high quality, aligned to literacy essentials, and then be able to support teachers in the classroom, because we know this is an area that teachers are not really comfortable with. You know, I was growing up in the 80s, and there was definitely a lot of whole language. For some reason, I loved phonics workbooks, but I definitely did not. I was always good in school, and I was always a good reader. I loved to read, but I wasn't actually a good reader. Like, I really didn't know how to decode words well and to be a strategic reader until I was teaching first grade and realizing, holy man, wish someone had taught me to read this way, you know, because I was just very good at memorizing things and not really, I was always digging in because I was curious, but I really did not get instruction in morphology. And so there's so many examples across Read, Write, Roar that talk about some of the things that Dr. Tortorelli was sharing, just like explicit things we can tell kids to make it easier for them. Like every syllable has to have at least one vowel. Like that's pretty simple. I mean, we think about, we don't want to be rule-based, but something like that's pretty easy to be able to share with kids. And so across the episodes that we have on the show, you'll notice, because she was a grade 2 teacher on the K3 show and then was brought back for the 4-5 show. And so we really wanted to make sure that we had as much explicitness as possible for that. And so what I want to be able to do is really show you an example of her doing that and be, whoops, not yet though. But first I want you to just get a sense of what these will look like if you're trying to use them, and then give you a little bit of confidence knowing that they're exactly based in all the research that Laura just shared with us. So they're going to be 4 to 6 minutes long. There'll be explicit instruction and modeling where you break words into parts. There's analyzing the word parts, looking at the morphemes. You find the affixes, meaning prefixes and suffixes. There's a lot of segmenting and blending the word parts in the word. And then there's always that like check for understanding. Does it make sense? And she models like vowel flexing in these. Like sometimes you read it wrong and then you have to reread it with a different sound and see if it sounds right. So all of that is modeled. And, nope, sorry, this is backwards. So what I broke it down for you is this is what we have available now. But again, there's more coming out because we're still in production. So there's at least 6 more lessons coming. But if you wanted just a quick way to be able, these aren't in a playlist yet like the K3 ones are, but they are on this sheet for you that's linked in the agenda. So you could go in and just check them out. But together we are going to take a look at one. In terms of summer learning, this is a way that you can like supplement what you're doing. And because there are the playlists, you can easily go in and see if there's something that you're about to teach, like R controlled vowels, for example, and you can see if there's a lesson in there that could support you. And I do think about parents, and we shouldn't expect parents to know how to teach children to read, right? Like think about all of us that are like trained literacy specialists in this room, and we're still getting training and we're still asking questions. So parents need us to like help them out and make them feel more confident. And so if we can give them something that's a tool, and it was done by a certified Michigan teacher, supported by a Michigan literacy coach who's been in the network for, 10 years, and also connected to the essential practices and connected to research. At least it points them in a direction of high quality materials. I get questions sometimes about screen time. So just so you all know, Michigan Learning Channel is 100% wanting to be aligned with what is recommended through the American Academy of Pediatrics, right? So limiting screen time and using high quality materials. And also, the specific Michigan Learning Channel content isn't even available until pre-K. However, there are parts of the pre-K series that are meant to support families with knowing how to talk to their kids and how to expand vocabulary development. So even though specifically Michigan Learning Channel itself doesn't have content below the pre-K level, there are some things like at the pop breaks or the different some of the exercises are for older kids, but there's these other pop checks that are actually, I think, out of a PBS station in Colorado, and it's another really zen woman that's doing like deep breathing and like pretend you have a balloon and you're gonna like blow it away. It's like very relaxing, So there are some things like that you could use, but there's not an endorsement that we want to have kids plugged in. So I feel like I should say that because sometimes that comes up, and really the Michigan Learning Channel, because it's in partnership with PBS, can support other shows for below that age that could be high quality. Like my kids only watch PBS, like Super Y, Daniel Tiger, the Wild Kratts, My son used the word symbiotic when he was 2 to his grandfather and was like, "Hey, Pappy, did you know that hippos and that bird have a symbiotic relationship?" And my father-in-law was like, "What does symbiotic mean?" I can't believe he was talking about that. But it's Wild Kratts, right? So there are ways that you can have like high quality engagement. And though Michigan Learning Channel doesn't go below pre-K, there are PBS shows.
Do you ever find complicated words when you're reading? I know I do. I'm Mrs. Morna. Today we'll learn to use vowels and word parts to read and understand multisyllabic words. Each year, farmers collect sap to boil into maple syrup. As you learn about Michigan's trees, you might come across complicated words. The Ishalav strategy helps us read long words. Ishalav means every syllable has at least one vowel. This is almost always true. Since a syllable can only have one vowel sound, vowels help us break words into parts. Here's our word. First, we'll mark all of the vowels. Which vowels do you see? Here's E, E, A, U, and E. Next, we'll join any vowel teams into one vowel sound. Vowel teams are groups of letters that work together to make one vowel sound. Do you see any vowel teams? ER is an R-controlled vowel that says er. URE also spells er. Notice that this final E does not make the U say a long sound. Now, let's identify known word parts. What do you see? URE is a noun suffix that shows an action, process, or result. It often joins the letter T in a syllable, making this T say ch, sure. Let's count the number of word parts to expect. Remember, almost every syllable has at least one vowel. So we'll count the vowel sounds to know how many parts to expect. Each vowel sound will count as one part. Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 parts. Next, we'll break the word into parts. Since we counted 4 vowel sounds, we'll need 4 parts. Chur is a part because it has one vowel sound. A syllable can only have one vowel sound, so we'll separate the other vowels. Syllables often split between consonants, so we'll separate the first syllable between N and P. Next, ER and A make separate vowel sounds, so they will be in separate parts. Let's say the word temperature. Temperature. Is that a real word? Not quite. Sometimes we have to try different letter sounds to make a real word. Temperature. Oh, temperature. Or you may hear this pronounced as temperature. Temperature is a measurement of how hot or cold something is. Farmers collect sap when the temperature is warm during the day but below freezing at night. If you speak Spanish, the word temperatura can help you understand this word. Los granjeros coleccionan la savia cuando la temperatura es alta en el día y bajo cero en la noche. Great work today. Keep reading and try the strategy the next time you find a challenging word.